All right, so I know, well, first off, this stuff that we're going to talk about today is not on tomorrow's quiz, okay? I repeat, this stuff is not on tomorrow's quiz. The only way you are going to encounter E tomorrow on the quiz is in that PERT formula, okay? Now, today's note should be pretty quick and easy because what we're going to be doing down here is graphing equations involving E. But the way we graph them is exactly the same as the way we graph the exponential growth and the exponential decay. So even though I'm teaching it with E, the process of graphing this is review for tomorrow's quiz. Capiche? Okay. Let's see. So we have this equation, and this equation should look just like your exponential growth and decay equations, except for the fact that instead of B, or in place of B, we have what? E. 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 Okay? Everything else is still the same. Okay? So if I didn't say it already, you do need your calculator because E, we're going to use that E button again on our calculator. Before we get down to the graphs, I want to look at these right here. Now, we need to determine whether it represents exponential growth, decay, or neither. Now, some of the IM3 teachers are emphasizing the neither as far as it being growth reflected or decay reflected. I'm not emphasizing the neither so much. I rather just have growth and decay at this point. I will say that if you happen to get an equation like this on your test, that would be a neither. Why is that one a neither? Because it's a parabola. It's only exponential if there's an x in your exponent. If your exponent is a number, then we have a polynomial. We don't have an exponential. So that would be an example of a neither. All right? Other than that, in each one of these, I'm going to identify what my B value is to determine if it's growth or decay. What do we remember about B? How is it growth if B is what? Bigger than 1. And it is decay if B is what? Between 0 and 1. So, here's how we find B. Isn't the first number A, usually? B is going to be the next letter, or the next number, and its exponent, not including the x. So in this problem, B is equal to e to the 5th. In this one, what does B equal? E to the negative second. Now, it doesn't really equal e to the negative second because of something we talk about down below, but we're just going to go with it right now. What would B equal to here? This is a trick one. Isn't this A? B is 1/2. Moved the E just to mess with you a little bit. What is B equal to here? E to the what? First power, because the coefficient of x is 1. And this one, B is what? E to the first power also. So, to determine if these are growth or decay, I just have to see if e to the 5th is bigger than 1 or if it's between 0 and 1. So on my calculator, e to the 5th is what? 148.41. What does that make this whole equation? Growth. What about e to the negative second? Excuse me. 0.135. That would be decay. What about 1/2? Notice it's not e to the 1/2, it's just 1/2. That is decay. Because it's 0.5 and that's less than 1. What's e to the first? 2.71, right? So is that growth or decay? And the next one is also e to the first, so it is also growth. Okay? Questions there? All right, so let's go to the graphing. first thing I want to identify, H and K. What is H for this problem? Notice H is out here with the X. Is there anything out there? So H is 0. What is K? -1. Which one goes in the middle of my X column right here? H goes right in the middle of my X column. What does K tell me? My asymptote. Do you see how this is review for tomorrow's quiz? Okay. Now, do you notice here there's actually now a line for me to write my asymptote? What am I going to write here? Y equals -1. If you just write -1, you will lose that point because y equals -1 is the equation of a line in y equals mx plus b form. It just happens to have a slope of 0. -1 is just a number, not a line. So you have to write that equation. What do I do from here? Fill in some points around. So I'm going to do -1 and -2, +1 and +2. And then what do? Start plugging stuff in. This is the only difference is you're going to be using your E button when you plug stuff in. And when you use the E button, guess what? You get decimals because E is an ugly decimal. It's going to produce ugly decimals. Okay? So, E to the -2 times X, which I'm going to say is -2. Close your parentheses before you put that K value because otherwise your calculator is going to have issues figuring out what's H and what's K. And I get 53.6. Does it matter if I put 53.6 or 53.598? No. Does it matter how many digits I have? Not on an XY chart because my graph isn't precise enough to notice that kind of a difference. Okay. Now I'm going to go change that -2 to a -1. And I have 6.4. Now I'm going to go change the -1 to a what? 0. Whoop. I got to delete that negative sign. What do I get? 0. Now change the 0 to a 1. -0.86. I'm going to leave that there as 86, and I'll show you why in a minute. And this one is -0.98. The reason why I left that one as 0.86 instead of rounding it to 0.9 was because this one right here would have been 0.9. I can't round that one to -1. Why? Because -1 is my asymptote. It's not going to round off. You can't touch that asymptote. So I just left it as the 0.86 to show that it is slightly different than the 0.98. Okay? So, -253 is way off my chart. -1, 6.4, 0, 0, 1, -0.86, and 2, -0.98. One thing you will notice as you are using E is you are always going to get, I shouldn't say always, you are often going to get one end that has a ridiculously big number. E just tends to be kind of dramatic like that. So there will usually be one number, possibly two, that will not fit on your graph. Okay? Again, that line, or that curve that you're drawing, it cannot cross over that asymptote. It also cannot curve back up. Some people get lazy and they just go whoop, and then they start curving it back up. It cannot curve back up. That's not what it's doing. Okay? What's my domain? And my range? Greater than -1. Y is greater than -1. Easy peasy? Okay. Let's try the next one. What is H? H is 2. K is 0. H goes in the middle of my XY chart. Yeah? Filling in my values around. K tells me what? My asymptote. Please bring a highlighter or something for your quiz tomorrow to do the asymptotes with. I do have several here that I'll leave with the sub just in case you need one. But okay. So I think I'm set. Let's see. Let's write my equation of my asymptote. What's my equation? Y equals 0. And now let's start plugging some stuff in. So this equation, I have 2e to the 0 minus 2, right? And I get 0.27. You could call it 0.3. Either way, it doesn't really matter. Now I'm going to change the 0 to a what? 1. 0.7. Now I'm going to change the 1 to a 2. And I get 2. Why did that one become a nice number? Because 2 minus 2 is 0, and e to the 0 is 1.
So 2 times 1 is 2.
And anytime e is to the 0 power, we finally get a nice number. Now I'm going to change that to a 3. And now I'm going to change the 3 to a 4. And I get 14.8, we'll say. So. 0, 0.3, 1, 0.7, 2, 2, 3, 5.4, and then 4, 14.8 is off my graph. But I do know that it's going that way. So how many points in general do I want on your XY chart? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points on there. Okay, that H value being 1 in the middle. What's my domain? Should be the easiest points you get on the quiz. Yes, ma'am.
You said you want 5 points, but 4 doesn't fit on the graph.
I want 5 points on your chart.
Oh.
You may only be able to fit 4 on your graph, but I want 5 points on your chart. Okay. What's my range? Y is greater than 0. Okay. By the way, do you know what's on your quiz? You would if you read the top of your homework. This was your homework last night? 2 graphs and 3 word problems. Yes. The graphing will be on the quiz, but the equations will not have E. They will have real numbers. I mean, E is a real number, but they'll have nicer numbers. Okay? All right, let's look at this last one. This last one has a little trick to it. And the trick comes with how you find H. Because every single time we have found H, there has been something in common with the exponents in those equations. And that is the fact that we have never ever dealt with a coefficient on that X. What do I mean by coefficient? The number in front. It's always just been plain old X minus 4, X plus 1, X plus 3. We've never had a number in front of the X. Now, that needs to take us back a little bit. Okay? That's why I said there was actually kind of an issue with that. We just weren't going to deal with it now. How do you actually find H? Other than changing the sign, what are you doing mathematically? You're actually setting it equal to 0. So that's how you get your X equals 2, and that's where H comes from. I have to do that down here as well. So when I set 4x minus 2 equal to 0, and I add 2, and yes, you might be able to do this in your head. Divide by 4, I get x equals 1/2, which for graphing purposes, I'm going to call it 0.5. And that is my H value. I have no idea what that sound was. Okay, so that's how I find my H value. Now that tells me that 0.5 is what goes in the middle over here. Yeah? So that's what's different about this problem right here. K is still the same. What would K be here? 5. So my asymptote is up here. Yeah? And I'm going to call that what? Y equals 5. Now, when I'm setting up my XY chart, I don't want a bunch of decimals on the X side because that's just a pain. So let's give ourselves nice numbers outside of there. So think about this for a minute. What are the two numbers that are closest on either side to 0.5? What is it between? 0 and 1. So how about we start there, and then we do -1 and 2 to go out one more level. That way I'm not plugging in an ugly decimal every time just for that 1. Okay? So, this one I have to be a little careful with how I plug this in. I have -e. You see what I'm typing in there? -e to the 4 times -1 minus 2. And I can type that in like that. I don't have to worry about parentheses because PEMDAS will have them do the multiplication before the subtraction anyways. I do need to close the parentheses though, just so that they know the +5 has nothing to do with the exponent. It's a k value. And what do I get? 4.99. Am I going to round that up to 5?
No.
No. Why not?
Because that's your asymptote.
Because that's my asymptote. So I'm just going to call it 4.9. Now what number do I need to change? The -1, I need to make it a what? 0. So I'm deleting that negative and then writing a 0. I get 4.86. I'm just going to call that 4.8. Now I change the 0 to a what? 0.5. Now if you have this calculator, you can't just start typing 0.5 here. You have to hit insert, INS right there. Do you see that? If I hit second insert, watch what's going to happen. You see my cursor blinking right there? Watch what's going to happen. It's going to change the way it looks. It's not a box anymore. That means I can now insert a 0.5, and it's not going to copy over what was already there. It's just going to insert what I need it to. Does that make sense? Good answer. And I get 4. Now I'm going to arrow back and delete a couple digits because I need a 1. And I have -2.38. I'm going to call that -2.4. And then finally change it to a 2. And I get -398.4. Remember how I said E can give you big numbers? How's -398.4 for you? That's a pretty big number, isn't it? Clearly that's not going to fit on my graph. So I'm not too particular with how you're going to round off stuff here because we just want to make sure that the one thing I don't want to see in your XY chart, I don't want to see a 5 right there because that would be conflicting with what an asymptote does. Okay? So round down or up, I don't really care for the XY chart. All right, here. -1, 4.9, 0, 4.8. Now watch how this works. 0.5, 4, and then 1, -2.4. Do you see how steep that moves? It almost makes a right angle up there because it's cutting down so quickly. And this wasn't the prettiest way down here, but you get the idea. Okay, what's my domain? And my range? Y is less than 5. And we're good. Yes, question?
When you're getting the range,
Uh-huh.
can you just look at if it's a negative or positive in the front and then take the asymptote?
Yes, because the negative sign in front is what makes it go below the asymptote, and that's what makes it less than. If it was a positive in front, that would make it above the asymptote, and that would make it greater than. So it's very much related. Okay? Any other questions? All right. Your homework is worksheet 13.3, and that's going to come around now. Happy studying.